They say your life can change in an instant. For me, it changed in the serpentine, neon-lit bowels of the San Francisco International Airport. It was 5:45 a.m., and the terminal hummed with a special kind of muted desperation. The air smelled of stale coffee, disinfectant, and the faint metallic tang of sleep deprivation. I was running on fumes. A brutal 3-week project had finally concluded, and the client had been a soul-sucking vortex of last-minute changes and condescending demands. All I wanted was to get on Flight 287 to JFK, collapse into my premium economy seat, a luxury I'd splurged on for survival, and sleep until the wheels touched down in New York. Home. I was in the TSA pre-check line, a blessed river of slightly less miserable humanity. We moved with the quiet, shuffling efficiency of cattle who'd paid for the privilege. I was 5 people from the front, already mentally untying my shoes when he arrived. He didn't so much arrive as erupt. A bluster of noise and motion. Out of my way. Coming through. The voice was a nasal bark, accustomed to being obeyed. I turned to see a man in his late 40s, sporting a too-tight polo shirt stretched over a proud gut. Expensive sunglasses perched on his thinning hair despite the indoor gloom. He was dragging a bulging carry-on and talking loudly into his phone. "No, Brenda, I don't care what the contract says. You tell them if it's not on my desk by 10, the deal is ash." Ash. He bulldozed past a young mother trying to corral a toddler, ignoring her startled yelp. He didn't even glance at the end of the line. His trajectory was clear. He was making a beeline for the ID check station at the front. A collective, silent groan went through the line. We'd all been here before. The line cutter. The rules, the shared misery, the basic social contract of queuing. None of it applied to him. He was the main character. My own fatigue, a dull ache behind my eyes, sharpened into a needlepoint of irritation. But I, like everyone else, said nothing. What was the point? A confrontation would just delay everyone. And he'd probably just scream into his phone louder. He slammed his passport and boarding pass onto the counter in front of the weary-looking TSA agent. "Thorne. First class. Let's go, I've got a bird to catch." The agent, a woman with the patience of a saint and the eyes of a battle-hardened veteran, didn't look up. "Sir, the line starts back there." Thorne let out a short, barking laugh. "I don't do lines. I'm a Nexus member. Global entry. All that." He gestured vaguely, as if his membership in trusted traveler programs granted him the divine right of kings. "This is the pre-check line, sir," the agent said, her voice flat. "And everyone here is a member. The back of the line is that way." A flicker of annoyance crossed Thorne's face. He leaned in, lowering his voice but not enough that we couldn't all hear. "Listen. I'm on a tight schedule. I'm sure you understand. Just scan it." For a beautiful, fleeting second, I thought she would hold firm. But the line behind me was growing, the pressure was on, and she had a job to do. With a sigh that spoke volumes, she picked up his documents, scanned them, and handed them back. "Thank you," Thorne said, not meaning it. He snatched his things and marched triumphantly towards the X-ray belts. Not a single glance of acknowledgement for the 20 people he'd just cut. My blood simmered. It was such a small thing, in the grand scheme. A 2-minute delay. But it was the sheer, unvarnished entitlement. The absolute certainty that his time was more valuable than all of ours combined. I finally made it to the agent. She gave me a small, apologetic shrug as she checked my ID. "Some people," she murmured. "Yeah," I replied, my voice tight. "Some people." As I placed my laptop in a bin, I saw Thorne again. He was causing another scene at the X-ray, refusing to take his laptop out of its TSA-approved case, arguing with another agent. He finally huffed and complied, storming through the body scanner as if it were a personal insult. I followed, collecting my things from the belt. My gaze fell on the small, plastic bin that contained his belongings. His passport and boarding pass lay there, waiting for him. He was too busy stuffing his laptop back into his bag to notice. An impulse, sharp and reckless, seized me. It was wrong. It was insane. But the image of him shoving past that young mother was burned into my retina. As I slid my shoes back on, I casually reached over and palmed his boarding pass. I didn't even look at it. I just folded it once, twice, and slipped it into the back pocket of my jeans. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of adrenaline and guilt. Thorne finished repacking and snatched up his passport from the bin. He never even noticed the missing boarding pass. He strode off towards the gates, a man who had conquered the great obstacle of security. I stood there, my own boarding pass in one hand, a stolen one burning a hole in my pocket. What the hell had I just done? It was a petty, foolish act of revenge. He'd get a new one at the gate. It would be a minor inconvenience, nothing more. I pulled the stolen pass from my pocket and finally looked at it. Alexander Thorne. First class. Seat 2A. Flight 287 to JFK. My flight. A slow, dangerous idea began to uncoil in my mind. What if it didn't have to be just a minor inconvenience? He thought his first-class ticket made him untouchable. He thought the rules were for other people. I looked at my own boarding pass. Seat 19C. I'm a digital compliance analyst. My entire job is about finding the tiny, overlooked breaches in complex systems. The single line of faulty code. The one clause in a 1,000-page user agreement that, if violated, gives the company the right to terminate service. I find weaknesses. I find loopholes. And as I watched Alexander Thorne disappear into the crowded terminal, I realized I was looking at a walking, talking violation. A man made of loopholes. He thought he was headed to New York. But as I started walking towards the gate, a cold, focused calm settling over me, I made a silent promise. He was never going to board that plane. The walk to gate 47 was the longest of my life. Every surveillance camera felt like an accusing eye. Every passing airport employee seemed to look directly at the felony in my back pocket. Relax, I told myself. You haven't done anything illegal yet. Just misplaced a document. For now. I found a secluded seat in a corner with a view of the gate. The New York flight was already boarding Group 1. Business travelers with tired eyes and expensive briefcases formed a neat line. And there he was. Alexander Thorne. He was no longer on the phone, but he was tapping his foot impatiently, glaring at the gate agent as if the slow procession of first-class passengers was a personal affront. My laptop was already booted up. I connected to the airport's paid Wi-Fi, the connection sluggish but stable. I had work to do. First, I needed to understand my enemy. I opened a private browsing window and started with the basics. Alexander Thorne. The name wasn't uncommon, but adding San Francisco and finance, a safe bet, given the deal is Ash comment, narrowed it down. A few clicks later, I found him. Alexander Thorne, Managing Director at Apex Venture Partners. His LinkedIn profile picture was the same man, but with a more carefully managed smirk. I cross-referenced with the company website. Bingo. It told me he was important, at least in his own mind. But I needed more. I needed a lever. My mind raced through the possibilities. Could I cancel his ticket? Probably not without his confirmation number or access to his airline account. A bomb threat? Absolutely not. That was a line I wouldn't cross, a fantasy of ultimate power that belonged in movies. Not in my morally gray reality. No, this had to be cleaner. More precise. It had to look like an accident. A system error. The kind of bureaucratic nightmare that people like Thorne despise because they can't scream it into submission. I needed the airline's rules. The fine print. I navigated to the website of Omniair, the carrier for Flight 287. I found the contract of carriage. It was a monolithic document, a jungle of legalese designed to be ignored. This was my habitat. I started scanning. Conditions of fare. Check-in requirements. Refund policies. It was all standard stuff. Then, I found a section titled Government and Carrier Imposed Travel Requirements. My eyes skimmed over the text about visas and passports. Then a subclause caught my eye. 7.4. Secure Flight Passenger Data Verification. Passengers are required to provide full name, date of birth, and gender as it appears on their government-issued photo ID. The carrier, as mandated by the Transportation Security Administration, TSA, verifies this information through the Secure Flight Program. Any discrepancy, however minor, between the passenger's ID and the information provided to the carrier may result in delays or denial of boarding. My heart gave a little kick. Any discrepancy, however minor. I looked at the stolen boarding pass. Alexander Thorne. Then I looked back at his LinkedIn profile. Alexander Thorne Jr. Jr. The lever. It was right there. A tiny, insignificant suffix that millions of people omit every day when booking flights. But was it in the airline's system? I had to know. I opened a new tab and went to the Omni Air Manage My Booking page. I didn't have his confirmation number, but I had his name and the flight number. Sometimes, that's enough to pull up a record, especially close to departure. I typed, last name Thorne, first name Alexander, flight 287. The page spun for a moment, then updated. We found your reservation. Please enter your confirmation number to access your trip details. A dead end. It wouldn't show me the details without the code. But it had found it. The name was a match. But was it an exact match? Did the system have Alexander Thorne, or Alexander Thorne Jr.? I needed a different approach. An idea, both brilliant and terrifying, began to form. What if I didn't need to access his booking? What if I could create the discrepancy myself? The secure flight data is sent by the airline to the TSA before the flight. The TSA then checks it against their watch lists and the passenger's ID at security. Thorne had already cleared security. His data had already been verified once. But what if a new flag was raised? A post-security, pre-boarding flag? I navigated to the TSA's website. There, buried in the contact section, was a link. Report traveler suspicions or concerns. The page was designed for reporting potential security threats, suspicious behavior, unattended bags. It wasn't for settling petty scores. Using it for this was a gross violation of its purpose. It was playing with fire. But the text was vague enough. If you observe behavior that concerns you. Had Thorne's behavior concerned me? His aggressive line cutting, his loud, abrasive phone call about a business deal that sounded shady? To my sleep-deprived, justice-seeking mind, it absolutely did. This was the point of no return. My thumb, slick with sweat, hovered over the trackpad. I looked up at the gate. They were boarding Group 3. Thorne was already gone, having swanned into the jet bridge long ago. But he wasn't safe yet. Not while the door to the aircraft was still open. Taking a deep breath, I clicked the link. The form was simple. Flight number, 287. Airline Omni Air. Time of flight, 4 hours from now. Then the description box. What could I say? I couldn't say he cut the line. I needed something that would trigger a security protocol, not an etiquette lesson. I thought about his phone call. The deal is ash. It was aggressive, but not illegal. I thought about his refusal to follow the TSA's laptop rules. A minor compliance issue. Then I remembered his passport in the bin. The photo page. I'd glimpsed it. His full name was there. Alexander Thorne Jr. And on the boarding pass it was just Alexander Thorne. Any discrepancy, however minor. My fingers flew across the keyboard, my tone formal and concerned. I am a passenger on Omni Air Flight 287 to JFK. I observed a passenger, who identified himself as Alexander Thorne, acting in an agitated and confrontational manner at security. During a loud phone call, he mentioned, "The deal is ash," and seemed under significant duress. Furthermore, I could not help but notice that his boarding pass, which he left unattended for a moment, lists his name as Alexander Thorne. But his passport, which I saw briefly, lists Alexander Thorne Jr. This name discrepancy, combined with his erratic behavior, was concerning enough that I felt I should report it. I read it over. It was all technically true. I was just connecting dots that a cautious security system might also connect. I was presenting a puzzle where the missing piece looked a lot like a threat. I didn't expect a SWAT team. I was hoping for a bureaucratic snag. A flag in the system. A reason for a gate agent to take a second look. I hit submit. The screen refreshed to a "thank you for your vigilance" message. It was done. The arrow was in the air. Now I just had to wait and see if it hit its mark. I closed my laptop and looked towards the gate. They were announcing the final boarding call. Would it be enough? The voice of the gate agent, a man named Ben according to his name tag, crackled through the speakers. "This is the final boarding call for Omni Air Flight 287, Nonstop service to New York JFK. All passengers, please proceed immediately to gate 47. We are now closing the flight. A few last-minute stragglers hurried down the jet bridge. I remained in my seat, pretending to read a book on my phone, my entire body thrumming with nervous energy. Nothing happened. The gate area was emptying out. Ben was tapping away at his computer, preparing to close the flight. My plan had failed. It had been a stupid, juvenile fantasy. The TSA had probably received a million such reports, and my little note was already buried in a digital graveyard. Thorne was probably sipping champagne in 2A, his entitled worldview firmly intact. I felt a flush of shame. I was an idiot. Then Ben's phone rang. It was an old wired handset on the podium. He picked it up. Gate 47, Ben speaking. I watched his face. He listened, his expression neutral at first. Then a slight furrow appeared on his brow. He turned slightly away from the few remaining passengers and lowered his voice. Right. Thorne. First class, 2A. You're sure? A junior discrepancy? Understood. I'll handle it. He hung up. The furrow on his brow had deepened into a trench. He looked annoyed. This was an inconvenience for him, a wrinkle in his smooth pre-takeoff routine. He picked up the intercom microphone again. His voice was still professional, but I could hear a new tension in it. Paging passenger Alexander Thorne. Passenger Alexander Thorne, please return to the gate podium immediately. My breath caught in my throat. It was working. I waited. A minute passed. 2. The jet bridge was empty. Ben made the announcement again, more insistent this time. Finally, a figure emerged from the mouth of the jet bridge. It was Thorne, his face a thundercloud of impatience. He stomped up to the podium. What is the meaning of this? He demanded, his voice echoing in the near-empty gate area. I was already seated. Do you have any idea who I am? I need to see your passport and boarding pass, sir, Ben said, his voice a masterclass in calm neutrality. You already saw them. At security. This is ridiculous. Thorne barked, but he slapped his passport onto the counter. He patted his pockets for the boarding pass. A flicker of confusion crossed his face. I must have misplaced it. It's not a problem, just print another one. I can do that, sir, Ben said, his fingers already clacking on the keyboard. But I need to verify your secure flight data. It seems there's a small issue. What issue? Thorne's voice was a low growl. Ben looked from his screen to the passport, then back to the screen. The name on your passport is Alexander Thorne Jr. The name on your reservation is Alexander Thorne. There's a discrepancy. Thorne threw his hands up in the air. Oh, for God's sake. It's the same thing. Everyone calls me that. My assistant must have booked it wrong. This is not a security issue, it's a clerical error. I understand, sir, Ben said, not understanding at all. But the TSA's secure flight program requires an exact match. A suffix like junior is considered a vital part of the name for verification purposes. So fix it, Thorne commanded. I can't, sir, Ben said, and I saw a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. Finally, a tool to deal with a difficult passenger. The secure flight data is locked in the system 72 hours before departure to be sent to the federal government. I cannot alter it. The name on your ticket must exactly match the name on your government-issued ID. The color was draining from Thorne's face, replaced by a blotchy, furious red. What are you saying? Ben took a deep breath. I'm saying, Mr. Thorne, that due to this discrepancy, I am not permitted to allow you to board this aircraft. There it was. The sentence. Delivered with the flat, unassailable finality of a man who is just following protocol. Thorne looked like he'd been slapped. You're denying me boarding? Yes, sir. But I'm in first class. I'm a Platinum Elite member. I'll have your job for this. The rules apply to all passengers, regardless of fare class or status, sir, Ben said, his voice hardening. He was done being polite. You will need to contact our reservations department to rebook on a later flight. They will also be able to correct the name in your frequent flyer profile for future travel. He reached over and took Thorne's paper boarding pass, the one he'd just printed, and with a definitive snip-snip of a hole punch he voided it. The sound was the most satisfying thing I had ever heard. No. This is unacceptable. Thorne was sputtering, his fists clenched. I have a merger signing in New York at 3 p.m. This is a billion-dollar deal. You can't do this. I'm afraid it's already done, sir, Ben said. He picked up the phone again. I'm going to need to call security if you don't calm down and leave the gate area. I watched, transfixed, as the reality of the situation crashed down on Alexander Thorne Jr. His bluster evaporated, replaced by a look of stunned, helpless fury. The system, the very bureaucracy he thought he was above, had just snapped shut around him like a trap. He stood there, trembling, as Ben picked up the phone and spoke quietly into it. A few moments later, 2 airport security officers appeared at the edge of the gate area. Thorne saw them. The fight went out of him. Shoulders slumping, he snatched his voided boarding pass and his passport from the counter. He turned, and for the first time, his gaze swept across the near-empty seating area. His eyes landed on me. I didn't look away. I didn't smile. I just met his stare with a calm, neutral expression. I was just another passenger, waiting for a different flight, witnessing a scene. But in that split second, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Not recognition, but a dawning, horrible suspicion. What happened next will shock you.
Watch out for part 2. Click the subscribe button below to subscribe to our channel, Beyond All Stories, for the rest of the story and other true stories.